किसी को कहने के लिए आइए सामने जाइए।
R. Sogani and Associates and Professor Jyotsna Mehta, Director, Subodh Institute of Management and Career Studies, Jaipur. I request the esteemed judges, guests to take their seats on the dais.
तो इधर देख इधर
Thank you, sir. Our chairperson for the session papers in journals of national and international repute. He has also authored and reviewed countless books. We are privileged to have such an eminent personality amongst us. Sir, I request you to kindly take over the session.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, sir.
Friends, this conference or seminar is on corporate governance new paradigms. What exactly the paradigm is? Before I come to the meaning of this paradigm, I extend a thank to this institution for having invited me for this conference, chairing this session, and my friends, Mr. Rajiv Sogani, Chartered Accountant, is here as a keynote speaker. The other friend, Dr. Jyotsna, she is here as a keynote speaker on this. They will be enriching our knowledge. I was talking about new paradigms of corporate governance. So paradigm means what? Paradigm means mindset. If we talk about new paradigms, means our mindset is changing regarding corporate governance. The Companies Act, which was an old act of 1956, now we have a new Companies Act 2013. And there are new provisions of corporate governance. Now corporate governance exactly is what? It is how the organizations will be governed, how they will be directed, how they will be regulated, and if there are clauses of disclosures, they have to disclose the information so that all the stakeholders can feel protected. The shareholders can feel protected, the customers can feel protected, all the stakeholders of the organization, the employees can feel protected, and even employer can feel protected. All the stakeholders, they should feel protected out of those regulations. But actually what is happening in this area? If you look at the organizations, many organizations have failed to comply with the provisions of the regulations or the corporate governance regulations. Why there have been scams in this country then? If there are regulations, why we cannot catch them? Why there was a Satyam episode? The auditors of the Satyam company were Price Waterhouse company, a very renowned company, renowned auditors of the multinational renowned auditors. And auditors are the watchdog. But dog should have barked at the right time. If he is a watchdog, dog should have barked when the scam was being taken place. Why the dog did not bark at that time? It was asked with that company, why you did not bark when the scam was being done? And what was their reply? The dog did not bark because midnight visitor was the member of the family. Now if the member of the family is not coming from the right gate, if he is coming from the back gate, the dog should bark. Even if the member of family is making, not complying the things, not complying the regulations. So auditors should be careful about it. That why the compliance is not taking place, why the scams are there. They cannot play with the funds of the shareholders like this. Why is Subrata Mukherjee in jail? Because he could not comply with the shareholders. Whatever the court said to pay to the shareholders, he could not comply with that. And Sahara scam has taken place in this country. There have been many scams. Vodafone could not comply, Kingfisher could not do it, Dhanlakshmi Bank could not do it, Bicon could not do it, Infotech could not do it, Financial Technologies, Educom. Number of scams in this country. Cadbury scam. Cadbury India. So under the nose of all these regulations, there is company law, there is SEBI regulations, and there are numerous law in this country, regulations in this country. The regulatory agencies and the regulatory regulations and the enactments, they have failed to catch the thief. They have failed to catch the people who are not complying with the regulatory provisions. There are no proper disclosures. The shareholders feel cheated many times. They are playing with the shareholders' funds because organizations are run on the democratic basis, and a handful of people, they manage their funds in a wrong fashion, in a wrong manner. They invest it in the wrong manner, and the shareholder feels cheated. So friends, we have two renowned speakers today, Mr. Rajiv Sogani and Dr. Jyotsna. She is from Subodh Institute of Management, heading that institute. I will not speak much because they are the key speakers of the day. I have introduced the topic, and now I will request Mr. Rajiv Sogani to speak to you on corporate governance new paradigms. Mr. Rajiv Sogani.
Chairman of this session, Professor N.G. Mathur, my co-speaker, Professor Jyotsna D. Mehta, Professor Jain from IS University, and dear participants. At the outset, I thank the organizers for inviting me on sharing my views on this topic, and I find that really the topic for this young participants is a bit serious one, but still I feel I'll be able to explain you the different facets of the issue involved here, and for that matter, probably theoretically we all know what is the meaning of corporate governance, as has already been said, the best practices, so that the all stakeholders, the interest of all stakeholders is safeguarded. And when we call all stakeholders, it means not only the owners, the employees, the suppliers, the customers, even the society, who may not be directly related to the company by way of any business transaction, but since the resources of the society are being used by the corporate entities or the business entities, so the society as a whole is also a stakeholder. Environment is again an issue which must be taken care while setting standards for corporate governance. So theoretically we all know that best practices to govern any business entity are means we call them as corporate governance standards. The genesis, the origin of corporate governance, you all know, because initially the business was very small, proprietorship concerns were there, different stakeholders were not there. So whatever was done, the society or other stakeholders were not that much concerned. लेकिन जो business का volume बढ़ा, corporate form आया, where the ownership and the management segregated, the volume increased, then the principles of corporate governance started taking effect and people started caring about the corporate governance standards. And in the Companies Act in India 1956, 2013, the legal provisions are there to ensure implementation of corporate governance standards. And in say Britain 1834 Companies Act was there. In our country 1956 से पहले 1913 Companies Act was there. So everywhere in all the laws corporate governance standards were there. First issue probably Professor Mathur has raised the issue when all legal provisions are in place, then why it so happens that every now and then there is some flagrant blatant failure of the corporate governance standards. So probably the first issue may be that merely having legislations are not enough. The corporates will have to understand that the principles of corporate governance are in their best interest, and I'll submit on that issue. And once the corporate entities understand that adhering to corporate governance standards is in their best interest, then only, in spite of it, I fully admit that legal provisions are required, legal provisions should be there, but you will know that under the partnership law there is no such provision. And even the limited liability partnership, which is a new law, there is no such provision. Proprietorship concerns, definitely there is no regulation which can mandate corporate governance standards. जबकि proprietorship concerns भी society के लिए उतने ही relevant हैं, लेकिन उनके लिए कोई corporate governance standards नहीं हैं. लेकिन आप पाएंगे कि बहुत सारे proprietorship concerns best corporate governance practices follow करते हैं. Because it is not because of the law, it is because they know that in their best business interest, for their growth, for their sustainability, adherence to these standards is necessary. Theoretically, you all know the basic initiatives were by Cadbury report in England, and in India, Kumar Mangalam Birla Committee was there, which mentioned about the initiative which country should take about the corporate governance principles. And most recently, September 2015, these OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which is, friends, which is, maybe you all are aware, it is something like G20 countries का एक organization है, और वो best standards जो member countries हैं वो follow करें. तो 2015 में उन्होंने about 6 principles corporate governance के float किए हैं for the member countries to follow. I am again not discussing those 6 principles. They may be too theoretical for you. These 6 principles are supervisory framework. There should be a proper supervisory framework in every regime. Supervisory framework should divide responsibility among supervisory, regulatory and enforcement authority. हमारे country में भी आप देखते हैं Reserve Bank is something, वो regulatory authority है, supervisory authority है, registrar of companies हैं, SEBI है. तो first principle ये है कि इन सबके जो duties and responsibilities हैं वो किसी भी country के अंदर properly divided होनी चाहिए, ताकि जो एक regulation का job है वो properly implement हो सके. Another is shareholders rights. हमारी कंट्री में भी 2013 के कंपनीज एक्ट के बाद और भी ज़्यादा शेयरहोल्डर्स के राइट इम्प्रूव हुए हैं. सो दैट इज अनदर राइट, शेयरहोल्डर्स के राइट्स हैं, विच इज अनदर प्रिंसिपल आउट ऑफ द 6 प्रिंसिपल्स. देन इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टर्स एंड मार्केट्स. एक उन्होंने इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टर्स, आप जानते हैं बच्चों की इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टर्स जैसे मान लीजिए LIC is an institutional investor in Larsen & Toubro. Now the OECD principles say कि इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टर्स को बिहेव कैसे करना चाहिए, बिकॉज दे आर बल्क, दे आर नॉट द ओनर्स, रियल ओनर्स आर डिफरेंट, बट दे आर इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टर्स. सो व्हाट शुड बी देयर रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी इन ensuring the corporate governance standards. Then stakeholders in corporate governance, different stakeholders जो हैं उनसे related corporate governance के standards क्या होंगे. Transparency and disclosure. Probably the key issue is transparency. If transparency is there in the functioning of corporate entities, then probably we can ensure that yes, corporate governance principles are being implemented. And now the shift is from periodical reporting to almost daily reporting. Say, therefore, the transparency and reporting is important for corporate entities, and then the functioning of board of directors. So these 6 principles they have now floated in September 2015, but all these are very theoretical. Now I have picked up certain case studies for you people so that we can understand what we mean by corporate governance, what is the position. Now here is the position, friends. I hope you must have been following this issue of non-performing assets. जो बैंक्स के bad debts हैं, बैंक्स ने जो डिफरेंट लोगों को लोन दिए हैं, उनमें से जो नॉन रिकवरेबल लोन्स हैं, जो बैड हो गए हैं, जिन्हें नॉन परफॉर्मिंग एसेट्स बोलते हैं, आप लोग पाएंगे कि रिजर्व बैंक ने पिछले कुछ दिनों से सारे बैंक से ये कहा कि आप अपनी बुक्स क्लीन करिए. You have not been properly reporting the non-performing assets. You are hiding non-performing assets. So Reserve Bank is a regulator. ये regulator पहले भी था और अभी भी वही regulator है. Reserve Bank के strict होने से you will find that there is a huge increase in the reporting of non-performing assets. Now see State Bank of India. 61,991 thousand crores rupees was the figure for December 2014, and December 2015 it increased to 72,792. Profit of December 2014 2,910 से गिर करके 1,115 आ गया because of reporting of these non-performing assets. Now see the position of Bank of India. 16,694 से almost 3 times non-performing assets were reported. 36,519 और जो profit 173 का था वो loss में convert हो गया 1,506. So all this happened, and it is across the banking industry. It has happened. You can see it is Union Bank of India is the same, Indian Bank is same, Oriental Bank of Commerce is also same. Now the question is how it could happen. There is same Reserve Bank of India, there is same Board of Directors. और बच्चों आप लोगों को जानकारी होगी कि किसी भी पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक के अंदर जो बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स होते हैं उसमें एक नॉमिनी रिजर्व बैंक का भी होता है, एक मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फाइनेंस का भी होता है, और एक इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर, एक क्वालिफाइड सीनियर चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट भी होता है. और जो ऑडिट कमेटी होती है, जो ऑडिट कमेटी मेनली कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस के लिए पर्टिकुलरली फाइनेंशियल मैटर्स की जो रिस्पॉन्सिबल होती है, दैट इज हेडेड बाय एन इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर एंड दैट इज नॉर्मली ए चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट. इन स्पाइट ऑफ दिस, ऑल दिस हैपेंड, एंड व्हेन वन पर्सन, दैट इज प्रेजेंट गवर्नर ऑफ रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया, जब उन्होंने थोड़े मैटर्स को टाइट किया, देन द क्लियर पिक्चर इमर्ज्ड. So the same representative from Reserve Bank of India who was there on the board kept silent, but now the picture is different. How it could happen? could happen because there is concentration of power in the public sector banks, or for that matter in all corporate entities. The concentration of power is with the managing director. जो whole time directors हैं, जो chairman and managing directors हैं, executive directors हैं, they are able to prevail upon other members of the board. Other regulators are also, they can prevail upon, and that is probably the biggest issue India is facing. Lot of powers are concentrated on those managers who are full-time managers in any corporate entity. अब friends, इसका impact, what is the consequence of this with reference to the banks? अगर आप मेरा जो main emphasis है that it is not the law which can ensure the corporate governance. It is only the entities, if they can understand that it is good for them, then only they will follow the best practices. Now, can anyone tell what is the fallout of all this on the banks? ये जो अचानक एक क्वार्टर में, दिसंबर क्वार्टर के अंदर इतने ज्यादा एनपीएस हो गए, सो बैंक्स को इससे क्या दिक्कत होने वाली है? नाउ द बुक्स आर क्लीन प्रोबेबली, गॉड नोज, हो सकता है कि अभी भी काफी चीजें हिडन हो, बट बुक्स आर क्लीन नाउ प्रोबेबली. बट व्हाट इज द डैमेज विच इज इन्फ्लिक्टेड ऑन द बैंक्स? इन बैंक्स को कैपिटल चाहिए अब, बिकॉज बहुत सारा पैसा इनका डूब चुका है. अभी आपने बजट में देखा होगा, बजट में some provision. Can anyone tell what is the amount which is set aside for recapitalization for the banks?
25,000
crores, right? 25,000 करोड़, और वो सारी बैंकिंग इंडस्ट्री कह रही है कि वो बहुत कम है. इसका मतलब ये है कि अब इन बैंक्स को फॉरेन इन्वेस्टर्स के पास जाना पड़ेगा. There is a possibility, government is thinking. Now, can you, as an investor, will you like to invest in banks where the corporate governance standards are so poor? अगर आपसे कहा जाए कि आप इनमें पैसा लगाएं, तो आप कहेंगे कि साहब जिन बैंक्स के अंदर यही पता नहीं चलता है कि बेड डेट्स कितने हैं, अचानक से पता चलता है कि इतने ज्यादा बेड डेट्स सरफेस हो रहे हैं, तो will you like to invest in them? And what is the reason? Because the corporate governance standards are not there, transparency is not there, reporting is not proper, there is overwhelming concentration of decision making in one or two persons. So unless banks realize that unless they follow the best practices, no investor, forget the foreign investors, no investor, even domestic investor, will like to invest in such banks. So that is one example I thought would be relevant for you people to understand the implications of failure of corporate governance standards. Now, another similar issue is, India में अभी 2.46 lakhs crores, लगभग ये 3 लाख करोड़ का फिगर नॉर्मली माना जा रहा है कि 3 लाख करोड़ के नॉन परफॉर्मिंग एसेट्स बैंकिंग इंडस्ट्री में हैं एज ऑन टुडे. Now, what it denotes? These are the bad debt sort of thing across the country, across geographical locations, across countries, whether listed, unlisted, whether you can say corporate or non-corporate. इस सब के अंदर partnership concerns ने भी लोन लिया हुआ है, proprietorship concerns ने भी लोन लिया हुआ है. So, what is the single cause you will assign for such a big mess? 3 लाख करोड़ के नॉन परफॉर्मिंग एसेट्स हमारी कंट्री में इकट्ठे हो चुके हैं, विच इज टू हाई अ फिगर विथ रेफरेंस टू द बैंक्स ओवरऑल लेंडिंग टू द बोरोवर्स, विच इज वेरी हाई एंड वेरी अलार्मिंग ऑल्सो. तो बैंक्स का कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस लेवल पुअर था, उनके यहां पर ये सब कुछ हो सका. बट व्हाट इज द रीजन? जो बोरोवर्स हैं, हो सकता है कि उनमें से कुछ लोग बिजनेस में इसलिए फेल हो गए कि इकोनॉमिक सिनेरियो, द इकोनॉमिक कंडीशन इज नॉट गुड. दैट इज वन रीजन कि उसने पैसा बैंक से लिया, लेकिन इकोनॉमिक सिचुएशन ठीक नहीं थी, डिमांड नहीं थी, वो माल बेच नहीं सका, और जो पैसा उसने लिया था उस पर वो ब्याज और प्रिंसिपल रीपे नहीं कर पाया. सो दैट कैन बी वन रीजन. But do you think that across the country, across sectors, across the entities, this is the only reason? Then what can be the other reason?
Maybe fraud.
So fraud means what? Failure of corporate governance standards. So it means across the country we are badly lacking while when it comes to managing the business entities. I am not saying corporate alone. When it comes to managing the business entities in our country, the culture is not good. We are not good at following the corporate governance standards, and that is the reason across the country there are failures in the business also. So once now the viewpoint which is developing is that best practices of corporate governance are in the best interest of the entities themselves. Therefore, no legal requirement should force them, rather their own interest should force them to adhere to the best practices. Now friends, these are a few more case studies. By and large, they all denote Volkswagen case. Are you aware? Anyone can tell me what happened in this case? आप लोगों ने अगर पढ़ा होगा बच्चों तो yes. What happened in this case? No, not aware.
I'm not sure.
No, even if you are not sure.
सर कुछ प्राइस हाई करके बताया था.
No, yes.
So there was some kind of problems in their cars. So they brought it back and they are testing it or something.
हाँ, but the issue was कि उन्होंने deceive किया regulators को. जो emission standards थे, their vehicles were not meeting the emission standards. They were aware that they are not of that standard. लेकिन उन्होंने एक ऐसा device उसमें लगाया when those were tested by the regulators that flaw could not be detected. Now see, for a company like this, huge violation and a great failure of corporate governance. How it could happen? Was board of directors not functioning properly? At what level this decision could have been taken? How this was allowed to perpetuate? All these are big issues. And friends, when it was detected, CEO को resign करना पड़ा, and the shares about 25% value eroded almost in a week's time. इस company की, and the erosion was to the extent of about 18 billion US dollar. एक week के अंदर company की wealth 18 billion US dollars erode हुई. All this because they were not following the best practices of corporate governance. All the frauds are nothing but the result of lacking somewhere in the corporate governance standards. And Satyam case, you all know, this is probably the biggest accounting scandal in our country, and probably this is the scandal which led to Companies Act 2013 and lot many corporate governance principles which are there in 2013 Act are because of this scandal. And friends, again, सत्यम स्कैंडल से, जैसे अभी अपन चर्चा कर रहे थे कि बैंक्स को बहुत बड़ी दिक्कत हो रही है कि अब बैंक्स फॉरेन इन्वेस्टर्स के पास क्या मुंह लेकर के जा सकते हैं. फॉरेन इन्वेस्टर कहेंगे कि आपके कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस स्टैंडर्ड्स तो इतने पुअर हैं, हम कैसे आपके यहाँ पर पैसा लगा सकते हैं. Now similarly, at the time of Satyam, it was not one company which was facing the problem. The question mark over the entire IT industry was there. Whether all Indian companies are having similar corporate governance standards like even Infosys, Wipro, or young friends, you will know that corporates across the globe depend heavily for their operations on the support provided by these IT companies. जैसे मान लीजिए ड्यूश बैंक है, अगर वो मान लीजिए इन्फोसिस पे डिपेंड कर रहा है या किसी दिन वो सत्यम पे डिपेंड कर रहा था और पता चले जी कि इन्फोसिस फेल हो गया, तो इन्फोसिस की प्रॉब्लम तो अपनी जगह है, लेकिन उसके साथ प्रॉब्लम किसके साथ हो जाएगी? सो द प्रॉब्लम वाज हमारे आईटी इंडस्ट्री की सारी कंपनीज को वर्ल्ड ओवर ये एक्सप्लेन करना पड़ा, दे वांटेड टू चेक कि भाई आपके कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस स्टैंडर्ड्स क्या हैं, एंड दिस इज वन ड्यू डिलिजेंस नॉर्मली इज डन बाय फॉरेन इन्वेस्टर्स even when they establish business relationship by way of selecting them as vendor for their IT requirements or for even Walmart जैसे जो कंपनी है, अगर वो कंपनी इंडिया में या फॉर दैट मैटर किसी और कंट्री में से सोर्सिंग किसी मटेरियल का करेगी, तो दे विल वन ऑफ द आइटम्स ऑफ ड्यू डिलिजेंस वुड बी व्हाट इज द लेवल ऑफ कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस. अदरवाइज व्हाट विल हैपन, ऑल ऑफ अ सडन सम स्कैम विल सरफेस, the entity will be in trouble, and so that problem will travel to these companies also. So corporate governance, what I am emphasizing, and Chairman sir, my main purpose, because you come from the legal side, I am also from a profession where everything we feel the only remedy or only cure is providing something in the law. But I feel merely having some legislation in this regard may not be enough. And now corporates have started understanding this, because wherever corporate governance principles are failing, those companies are losing in their business. That is the problem. अभी आप लोगों ने देखा होगा बच्चों, जोधपुर की एक यूनिवर्सिटी में फर्जी डिग्री का मसला हुआ. Now, is it not failure of corporate governance? And will you like to join any such university जहां halfway आपको पता चले जी कि यूनिवर्सिटी बंद हो रही है? So that is one thing which now the corporate entities and other institutions have started realizing. I think there is no point in repeating the various case studies, because Toshiba Japan जैसी country में भी, which is known for best practices, about 6 months back, इस कंपनी में भी यही हुआ कि जो सीईओ था उसको अपने टारगेट्स अचीव करने थे, तो उसने क्रिएटिव अकाउंटिंग जो सत्यम में हुआ था, लगभग वही चीज तोशिबा जापान में हुई, और लगभग उनके पूरे बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स को भी रिजाइन करना पड़ा. अगेन दैट वाज अ बिग फेलियर. आपने इंडिगो में देखा होगा, अभी इंडिगो का आईपीओ आया था बच्चों, और आईपीओ के इमीडिएटली पहले उन्होंने एंटायर रिजर्व्स दे डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड बाय वे ऑफ डिविडेंड. Although that was within the four corners of the law, the company was entitled, but there was a lot of questions raised about their corporate governance practices when they are going for an IPO, and prior to IPO they are distributing entire reserves by way of dividends. Kingfisher is a well-known case where they have diverted the money to their sister concerns, and now they are facing the problem. But all these cases are failures of corporate governance. And friends, the present day scenario is, you know, India is a favorite destination for foreign investment these days. Now foreigners are ready to invest in Indian entities, but probably the biggest issue in their mind is that the corporate governance standards are very poor in this country. एंड अभी एक बिजनेस स्टैंडर्ड में स्टडी पब्लिश हुई थी, सम ब्रोकरेज फर्म हैज डन दैट स्टडी, एंड इट सेज दैट अबाउट टॉप 500 कंपनीज 335 बिलियन यूएस डॉलर फॉरेन मनी आया हुआ है. एफडीआई जो है वो इतना आया हुआ है, एंड वी नीड मोर सच मनी फ्रॉम द फॉरेन इन्वेस्टर्स. And unless we improve on corporate governance standards, not just the basic things which are provided in the law, overall transparency, the best practices which are, suppose again, see what happened in China when the entities did not care for the environment. Now the problem is most of the Chinese companies are facing problem. और चाइना का एक डेलीगेशन इंडिया आया था, और जब उनसे कहा गया कि साहब अगर आपसे ये कहा जाए कि इफ यू हैव टू revisit the last decade, so what what amendments you will do. They said, we ignored the environment badly, and now that problem we are facing, it's a big challenge for us for further industrial growth in our country. So ignoring environment is again what? Ignoring the best practice, because society is a stakeholder. Society is a stakeholder, therefore unless the industries take care of the environment, their sustainability will not be ensured for all times to come. Friends, that is all I wanted to share with you. I don't have any inclination to discuss the legal aspects of the corporate governance or the relevant provisions of the Companies Act 2013 or the SEBI regulations in this regard. But my only emphasis for this young audience is that unless the entities understand, and which fortunately now the entities have started understanding. So unless the entities start accepting the importance of corporate governance and adopting the best practices, these practices will not be, the country will not be able to implement these practices merely by incorporating these as a mandatory requirement in some or the other legislation. Thank you very much, friends, for giving me this opportunity of sharing my views with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sultani. Let me make it very clear to you, I am not from the legal side. I am a professor of economics.
Okay, but then
It is the destiny which has brought me as a principal of the law college. But that is...
That is very good, because in our country we feel that only a law person should head a law college. That is not a good thing, because our Reserve Bank governor is basically IITian, an economist also, but basically an IITian.
So it is my destiny, in fact. The message of Professor Mr. Sohmani is very clear, that merely law will not help, merely legislation will not help, merely regulation will not help. What will help? Adopting the best practices in the interest of business. That if you feel that business will flourish out of complying the regulations and the regulatory provisions and the legal provisions, the corporate best practices should be adopted so that the business may flourish. And all stakeholders can be benefited by that. That is the message which he has given. Friends, scenario of corporate governance is in a bad shape. And I would say कि निज़ाम में मैं कदा कुछ इस कदर बिगड़ा हुआ है साकी कि जाम उसी को मिलता है जिसे पीना नहीं आता. जिसके पास इन्वेस्टमेंट का डिसीजन है वो एनपीए 3 लाख करोड़ रुपए के खड़े कर रहा है. Those who are taking decisions for investing our funds, the public funds, they are creating non-performing assets. It means the concentration of economic power is in those hands, those who doesn't deserve it. So this concentration should not be there. There should be more decentralization in decision making, so that the right decisions, right investment take place, and the NPAs to the size of 3 lakh crores doesn't pile up like this. Now we have Dr. Jyotsna Mehta with us. She is Professor of Management at Subodh Institute of Management and Career Studies, Jaipur, and currently holds the charge of Director of this institute. She regularly conducts workshops on soft skills, stress management and communication skills. She has written several papers for academic journals and authored 11 books, as well as presented several papers in seminars, national and international conferences. She writes for newspapers on issues which reflect her deep concern for the social, political, economic environment that deeply impacts the world we live in. Her core competence in academics lies in the area of organizational behavior, this is methodology. She finds creative expression in writing and painting. It's rare, because painting by a management scientist like her, her ability to understand the finer nuances of human behavior and articulate her thoughts effectively is reflected in the writings. एक शेर सुनाऊंगा इनकी शान में आपको कि अगर मैं मुक्तसिर होता, मुक्तसिर कहते हैं एग्जामिनर, अगर मैं मुक्तसिर होता तो 100 में से 100 नंबर देता, लियाकत के भी और नजाकत के भी.
Thank you so much, sir. Good morning, everybody, and namaskar. I am first of all very, very grateful for the management of this institute to have invited me, especially Professor N.K. Sharma sir, Dr. Poonam Madan, Dr. Ruchi Jain, and I am honored to be here amongst you because we have on stage Professor N.D. Mathur sir, who is one of the leading lights of the university here, and C.A. Rajiv Sogani ji, who has so given you a very simple but very in-depth way of understanding corporate governance and brought in so much of his experience to explain to you what it basically means. What I'm going to do today is try and build up on only one aspect of corporate governance, something that kind of excites young people, because I know when we are studying, then one thing which is on our mind is how much we're going to earn once we finish our studies. So we are going to talk today about executive compensation and regulation. Corporate governance, as Rajiv Sogani ji has already explained to you, is about the best practices of how the corporation is governed. In fact, I would say good corporate practices are sine qua non for business enterprises. They are a given. If they are not there, like Sir told you, then we do not expect this organization to do good in the long run. So it is something that is indispensable to the organization. But what exactly is it? It is something, a best practice, a way of working, which is going to safeguard the management to begin with. It is going to protect the interest of the stakeholders, which is the shareholders, the employees, and all the people who have some sort of stake in the organization. And in the larger interest of the country, it is going to foster the economic progress of this particular country we live in. The objectives, if I sum up, are that corporate governance is very, very important for sustainability, for stability, for profitability, and it will increase the confidence of the shareholder. Like Sir also just said before me, it will increase the confidence of the foreign institutional investor, which is so important for a country which needs to build upon its capital. So we have legal provisions, and like Professor Saab also told us, that, and Rajiv Sogani ji built upon that, there is now provision for bringing in corporate governance through the Company Law 2013. And this is a much bigger improvement upon the older company law which was existing from 1956. So here we have a law which tries to build in greater involvement of the shareholders in decision making. There is a very big criticism of 1956, and Sogani ji will agree with that and he can give you more input on that. That one of the biggest criticism of the older law was that the interests of the minority shareholders were not taken care of. So this is a law which is going to try to build upon the interest of not only the larger shareholders but also the minority shareholders. It is going to try to introduce greater transparency in corporate governance, and it is going to safeguard the interest of both society and the stakeholders. The provisions therefore in the law which we are going to focus upon is about executive compensation. This is what I am going to be dealing with today. Now the people who are involved in executive compensation under the law are basically the manager, the managing director, the whole-time directors and the part-time directors. And we are going to talk about their remuneration. Now remuneration consists of two aspects. One is the salary, the money which they are going to be getting, and also the perquisites which are under the Income Tax Act of 1961, those parts of what is given to the executives which can be considered as part of the perquisites that they are given, and we are going to talk about this. Now there are three ways in which managerial remuneration works. The first is the automatic route, the profits. People who are heading the organization, who are the top level executives, are going to get a share of the profit because they have led this organization to its financial growth and success. The second route to increase their share would be through the shareholders' approval. If the shareholders approve that we must give this much more to our top executive, then they will have a say in that. And the third, the route to even giving a greater share to them would be through not only shareholder approval, but the central government gets a say in that and says that, okay, you can give them this much, but they're going to set some limits to it. Otherwise, we're going to have a lot of noise about how much money these top executives are getting. Now, the Companies Act 2013, although I probably understand it's very boring to talk about the, the legal aspects of it, but very briefly talks about one, the remuneration of which is payable by companies which are showing a profit. So the cap on that is that it should not exceed 11% of net profit which is calculated. So if a company has a certain amount of profit, then the top executive can be paid not more than 11% of this net profit, and this is a provision which is given in section 198 of the Act. The second part is remuneration payable by companies which do not have profit or have inadequate profit without central government approval, and these regulations are also included in that. Then you have another set of regulations for those companies where there is some sort of involvement of the Board of Industrial Reconstruction, and or you have some sort of national company law tribunal giving some dictates that these companies do not earn profit or inadequate profit, but still they have to be paid this much at least. And there are these provisions which they'll be in your books. You don't have to really talk about them here. And finally, we also have regulations about what exactly are perquisites, and if a top executive is on two companies, then how does he get paid? So this is about the law, and obviously all managerial compensations will have to be, top executive compensation will have to be within the ambit of the law that is provided. There is an increasing focus, there is a lot of media noise. If you look at the newspaper, if you look at articles, you find about, people who are being paid in excess, or, you're gasping and looking at the news, oh my God, this kind of salary this person gets. So that kind of an issue comes up, and we want to take a look at it as to whether this excess is real or it is perceived. The reasons for this media noise can be many. There could be a weak board, it could be a reality, it could be a dispersed ownership, it could be ill-informed financial community, whatever these reasons may be. But yes, today we know that there is a hue and cry, because today when I type on Google, I get 12 million results on executive compensation, which says that it is in excess. It could be a real problem, it could be a perceived problem, but we are going to take a look at it. We already know, having said that there is a law, there is some sort of, a boundary which is set by the government now through the Companies Law of 2013, we still have certain problems. And these problems are not new. This is 1929. Eugene Grace of Bethlehem Steel, I don't know if anybody's read about this company, but this was greatly responsible for the shipbuilding industry at that time in US. He received a base salary of $12,000 and a bonus of 1.6 million. This is in 1929. अगर मैं इसको convert करती हूँ dollars में आज की तारीख में, he got a bonus of $20 million and a salary of $150,000, which is a huge amount. Then there's another example of Mr. John McFarlane, who was the CEO of ANZ, and on his retirement, he's still working, but he's moved on from ANZ. His retirement package was $1 million, and this allowed him to buy back his vested shares despite considerable tax savings of his own. The company's board of directors said that no, he should not be given, in fact he deserves a tax refund once he is going to be able to buy these shares. So you have these stories. We have another story of Walt Disney. In the year 2008, when Walt Disney was actually going into a financial crisis, the company's CEO still got $51 million. So that is a huge amount. Then another example is from Ford, 2001. The company reported a loss of $5.45 billion. However, the company's CEO received $20 million compensation in that same financial year. Closer home, you have talks of, you have results which can talk about this. 2005-06, the salary of Naveen Jindal, who is the MD of Jindal Steel and Power, rose by 248% to 13.54 crores, whereas the profit growth of the company was stagnant at 23%. You can see the difference in that. In the same year, you have Pawan Munjal. He received a 15% hike even when Hero Honda, now it's called Hero Motoco, which you all know, recorded a hike of 15% in his salary, when actually Hero Honda was recording a decline in net profit of 11%. There is a flip side. There are cases where a company has reported 100% growth, and therefore the shareholders, there is no hue and cry about the CEO getting more money, so they're quite alright with that. But the issue of executive remuneration at the end of the day does deserve some level of attention. Even when it's operating within the law, there is still some talk, some discussion which merits consideration. We understand now, with these little examples, that one size cannot fit all. We will have to structure an executive compensation plan based on not just one factor, but several factors. The boundaries will be set by the law, but within that law, we still have to find our own space and settle our own, for our own company, what suits best. This is a very interesting saying by Al Dunlop in his book, Mean Business. The best bargain is an expensive CEO. You cannot overpay a good CEO, and you cannot underpay a bad one. The bargain CEO is one who is unbelievably well compensated because he is creating wealth for the shareholders. One head of a country which is overpaid but for the right reasons is in Singapore. He is paid, they say we want to pay him so much that he cannot even think about being corrupt. He doesn't need the money to be, so he will take the right decisions because he doesn't want to do anything which is wrong for his own country. So, executive compensation is an issue which is, we can agree on certain things. It's a complex issue. The first is we want to pay people who are doing good for our company. We want them to get greater and greater levels of salary or perquisites. We want to also align their executives' interests with the company's long-term interest. We cannot look for the short-term. We have to look for and we have to include some level of downside risk into their compensation package. We have to build that into their compensation package so that they do not, deplete it of its entrepreneurial skills and risk-taking ability. So that level has to remain bound into their compensation package. The problem, I think, probably lies in the execution level. It is two complaints which regularly emerge are executives are paid too much and the current incentive schemes are flawed. The compensation plan, of course, includes the salary, includes lump sum, includes the annual increment, includes retirement benefits, includes long-term options which are given. All these are part of an executive plan, and the three red flags which I want you to remember, that a company which is in the process of creating an executive compensation plan must remember these three challenges that they must remember that they have to face. The first of this is that they have to be prepared so they should know what are the industry basics, they should understand, they should have a diversity of skills in all the three fields, they should understand the best practices as they exist not only for their own industry but in the overall economy. There should be sufficient amount of time given for this whole discussion to take place, and there should be a certain scheme that they bring up where either they are going to talk about relative pay comparisons or they should have some sort of sharing ratio of the profits of the company. Only then they will be able to build up. So these three, having addressed these three red flags, we have to move on to what would be the right pay. The first step, therefore, is to recognize that the main corporate mission of any company is to look for the long-term sustainability of the company. The second is the shareholder leaders' incentives should be aligned to the executive leaders' incentives. The third is corporate governance should be built into the company's practice of whatever way in which they are running the organization. You have to move away from short-termism. This is an interesting example. There is a situation one, where a CEO has to take a decision as to invest great amounts in some sort of overhauling program, and if he does that, then the cost of investment will impact his earning, the company's earning, his stock options and so on. And the other is, if he delays the investment decision, his personal stock options will benefit, but the company in the long term will. So we must have people who are looking to take the better decision for the longer term. We have to link compensation and corporate governance deeply, and we have to therefore bring in a change in corporate culture. Something that towards the end of the speech, CA Rajiv Sogani ji also mentioned, that you have to go a step further. We need companies which we can be proud of, and that will come and create a better corporate culture for us. So it is vital to understand that the issue of CEO compensation goes beyond an absolute amount or how executives are paid. We have to look at question as to what sort of society we are turning into, and corporations are typically described only in financial terms and economic terms, and we look at our CEOs as people we have to bribe to do well, for bribe in terms of bribe with being paid more, but we have to understand that human beings are not relentless market maximizers who need to be bribed to focus on shareholder value. They are people who have a commitment to employees, to customers, to the community and the larger national and global concerns. So we must rethink the nature of executive pay within the gambit of the law, and we have to evolve and create a society for ourselves which makes us proud of ourselves as a nation and of our corporates as globally respected economic organizations. Thank you so much for listening so carefully to me.
Dr. Jyotsna Mehta has talked about compensation and what should be the right pay, what should be the right compensation of the CEOs. And they should be based on compensation committee. And compensation committee should look at the vision, should look at the long-term sustainability of the corporation before determining and deciding the compensation. You all must have heard that Indra Nooyi is getting 100 crores. That is the compensation of Indra Nooyi. किसी महिला का इतना बड़ा पैकेज नहीं है दुनिया. Sundar Pichai, how much he is getting in Google? Have you heard about it? Sometimes it is amazing to see the kind of compensation people are doing, what they are doing actually in fact. Are they adding value, that much value? So if you can add value for the organization where you will go, where you will be placed, you will get good compensation. You should be able to add the value for the organization wherever you are placed, wherever you go. So thank you very much, Dr. Mehta, for your valuable contribution in the compensation management. Now we have many speakers to speak on the issue, and I will call upon Shravasti Jain, Research Scholar, Department of Commerce, IIS University, Jaipur, to speak on corporate governance initiatives in Indian hotel industry, a case study of Taj and Leela. Shravasti Jain.
Namaskar everyone, I am Shravasti Jain, Research Scholar, IIS University. The topic of my research paper is Corporate Governance Initiatives in Indian Hotel Industry, a case study of the Taj and the Leela Group. Corporate governance is not just corporate management, it includes policies, efficient, transparent administration among the board of directors and all the stakeholders, all the shareholders, which includes creditors as well as customers. The Taj Group, the Indian Hotel Company Limited and its subsidiaries are collectively known as the Taj Group. It is recognized as Asia's largest and finest hotel company. The corporate governance initiatives at the Taj are according to the clause 49 and SEBI. It includes the board of directors comprises of two-thirds of the board of directors are executive directors, one-third of them are independent, one-half of them are independent directors. The board of directors meet every 6 months, and the gap in between the meetings are not more than 4 months. All the relevant information as recommended by SEBI is promptly furnished by the board of directors to all its shareholders and creditors. None of the directors of the board serve as members of more than 10 committees, or nor they are chairmen of more than 5 committees as per the requirements. The committees at the Taj, it comprises of audit committee. The audit committee entirely consists of independent directors. The stakeholders relationship committee, the scope of this committee has been expanded to report the status of the members, the debenture holders, the deposit holders and other security holders. Another committee is nomination and remuneration committee. This committee has become mandatory as per the requirement of SEBI and the listing agreement. The function of this committee includes formulation of the criteria, determining